I'm Daniel Silberstein. I'm an educational specialist at the Diagnostic Center of Northern California. The typical components of universal screenings are a measure of a student's language skills. There's also a measure of their phonological awareness, which is the sound-based process, hearing the sounds, blending the sounds, whether that's large units of sounds like a syllable or a whole word, and being able to blend it and segment it, or even manipulate it, like taking away a chunk of the sound. There also will be a measure of the student's rapid automatized naming, which is the verbal visual processing speed, so the efficiency retrieval of information from their long-term memory. And so in these tasks, the student will name digits, colors, objects as quickly as they can, and it will show a screener if the student has that efficiency retrieval of rote information, if they've stored those files in their long-term memory. That can be helpful for them to pull forward, just like when we have to read and we have to recall all the letter patterns. There'll also be measures of letter naming fluency, so being able to name the letters, word level reading, decoding, so reading nonsense words, but the student has to phonetically decode, spelling, and of course, as I think I mentioned before, language skills. So the student's overall language skills, which are going to be paramount to literacy development. So within the components of a screener are these larger cognitive underpinnings of reading development as a whole. Phonological processing or phonological awareness is the awareness of sounds. It's a sound-based process, such as blending sounds like k, at into the word cat, or segmenting them. Okay, if I give you the word ball, can you give me each part of those sounds? Like, okay, b, all, and the student gives it to it. Or manipulating it, changing the sound. So taking ball, taking away the a, and making it I to make a new word of bill. So that's phonological awareness, the awareness of sounds. And then orthographic processing is the visual representation of the letter patterns. So all the stuff in English that we need to learn, all the letter patterns, the vowel patterns, the consonant patterns, CH, TCH, the automatic and efficiency of being able to recognize those patterns and make a connection to them and store those files in our long-term memory is really important in reading development and areas that we will screen for, and that the teachers can understand and make progress in those areas. A screening is just a flag for future reading risk. It does not determine if a student has a domain-specific learning disability like dyslexia or other learning disabilities. It's just a flag for some of the cognitive underpinnings for literacy development, their language, their phonologic, the sound stuff, the sight stuff, their orthographic, and how that's impacting their reading as a whole. It's a clue for us as educators for which areas may be weak and need to be supported in a Tier 1 setting. A comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation for dyslexia per se is different. It would be beholden to the IEP rules of a specific learning disability, and you would need to do a comprehensive psychoeducational evaluation, including all the cognitive processing areas along with the achievement to see if there is a learning disability as a whole. So a screening is not a diagnosis, it's not a formal evaluation, it's just a clue for us as educators to identify the areas that are weak so that we can provide quality instruction to meet those students' needs. So within the statute for the reading difficulties risk screeners, we're going to be screening kids in kindergarten through 2nd grade. And again, we know from the research that early intervention is best. The brain has the most plasticity at this time, so if we can identify students early, we can provide an intervention that will best meet their needs. The research also suggests that phonological awareness, this really integral part of reading development, improves over time with an intervention. So if we can provide students an early intervention in their phonological awareness, identifying their needs, we really can have a lot of bang for our buck and make a lot of improvements and keep the students out of further accommodations and needs. So that's the goal of the reading difficulties risk screener, is to early identify our students so that, you know, it's much harder to support our students and remediate their reading skills when they're in the upper elementary school grades. So the best bet would be to identify them early as their reading difficulties and support them then. screening information is really useful for teachers, right? It really can inform your quality tier 1 instruction, in which case you have a better idea of what areas for your class is weak or which area is an area of strength. And so if you have more information about your students, especially in these cognitive underpinnings of literacy development, you know where the gaps may be and what you need to shore up. So if you identify your class has a number of students who have phonological, sound-based weaknesses, you know that you want to increase the minutes that you provide multisensory, systematic, sequential, phonological instruction for all the students in the classroom. And that will benefit everyone in there. And you can also target, in a small group class setting, specific skills for students or within your class, your program as a whole, based on their areas of need. You're getting more data, more information about how your students are functioning in this moment, and that can really inform your instruction as a whole. There's a lot that families need to know about the screening results. One is that it will be a flag that will show them at what level of risk their students are. First, to know that it's not a diagnosis based on the screening result. It's not enough information. And also that there's no high stakes determinations that can be made from the reading difficulties risk screeners. But they should know and have a better understanding of how their student is functioning in these large areas, right? Their language skills, their word reading skills or letter ID skills, their spelling skills, and their orthographic skills. So they'll have a better understanding that they're getting more information in those areas, and that information will help inform the teaching and the quality instruction in their classrooms. And they should know that this is just giving the school more information, and that will help hopefully provide a more robust program for all students within the Tier 1 setting. Any sort of sound-based or emotionally based connection can be really helpful in supporting your child in the developing literacy skills, whether that's learning side by side with them, working with them, singing songs, learning strategies, building in emotional connections for letter patterns and rules, talking about those things with parents can be really helpful and help a student progress along those lines. And again, one of the key definitions of dyslexia, right, is a weakness in phonological awareness, the sound-based process. So if you're increasing your sound-based or language-based, parenting, right? Like practicing, playing word games or sound games, things like that, that's building their phonological awareness. And it could just be simple things that you do together, be like, take pop, say that each sounded pop, up, blend it together, whatever it is. Okay, let's change the words, and making it kind of fun and playing a game with it. Those are sort of phonological skills that we want to see our children develop. And so, yes, make it fun, build an emotional connection with it, play a game with it, sing a song. All those things can be helpful in developing a student's literacy skills, especially in the home setting. Some strategies to employ, especially like a multilingual student whose symbols are different than in English. I think you need to make an emotional connection for new symbols, right? So whether that's drawing them, connecting them to the sounds, building individual words, things like that can be helpful. And again, it could be complicated, but I think that in general, building in sort of an emotional connection for something new, learning a new skill, and helping that student by multisensory instruction, put that information into an area that they can recall. That, oh yeah, that's what a PH looks like, and that says right in English, which is like maybe very different from what their language, the letter patterns and sounds in their language. So I would work not only the sound side and the difference of the sounds in English, but also trying to build in through games and whatever you can to help build in the symbol side and connect with them. And again, for orthographic processing for English speakers generally, and for students who struggle in orthographic processing, typically the best bet in terms of their instruction is they may not have the categories in their mind, right? The files in their long-term memory for all these phonics rules and all this stuff is a little bit jumbled, and so it's our job as educators to sort of organize that information, and one of the best ways to do that is through teaching the syllable types, right? Which are connected to the vowels. So the vowels and the syllable types, that type of instruction can be really, really helpful for students when they have orthographic deficits.